Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another retro adventure. The end of another week, the end of another poll. We've got a very clear win for Otherspace for the Star Wars role-playing game. Now, as usual, I'll cover this on the desktop in a wee second, and I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel-related news and some other poll-related news. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week I have been informed are reassuringly warm to the touch, which is absolutely lovely. And these people are absolutely lovely because they help support the channel and they make all of this possible. So I'd like to thank them very much. Now, if you'd like to join them and help support the channel, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to gain access to one of the other levels of patronage we've got, then we've got a Patreon in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Otherspace. So, this is Otherspace. It's for the Star Wars role-playing game, the very first edition. In fact, it's by West End Games and it came out in 1989. And the cover is fantastic because it tells us so much about the adventure. Not only do we have the quote here, but we've got a picture which is very revealing of what's going on in the adventure. Beyond the sane normality of real space, in a dimension one step removed from the shifting colours of hyperspace, rebel heroes face a deadly threat from another galaxy. So, the setup of the adventure is the players are rebel agents, and they're looking for a lost rebel prison ship, which contains various prisoners, including a Grand Moff, Imperial officers, bounty hunters, assassin droids, pirates, people who are hostile to the Rebel Alliance. And this vessel has gone missing, so they've been sent out to search for it. While they're searching, they come under attack from the Empire, and they make an emergency jump to hyperspace. And this reveals where the prison ship ended up, because their hyperdrive falls through a hole in space and jumps them into other space, burning itself out in the meantime. And they emerge into this place where there is a giant ship, but lots of lost ships who have had hyperspace malfunctions over the centuries are embedded into it, including the prison ship they're looking for. So they are stuck in other space with a damaged hyperdrive, but there's all these remains of other ships which they can go and salvage. So they can go aboard this massive vessel and search through it. Now, on board it are the Sharon, who are an alien race who have basically cleansed their entire galaxy, converting it all into them and their bioships. They've destroyed everything. And they are looking for something new. And the information that the Imperial officers, who they now have access to, and the technology on board these vessels and the player's vessel and the prison ship, will allow them to transition to the real universe and become a threat. So the players basically have to salvage for parts for their own vessel while sabotaging a galaxy-threatening force who will go into real space and threaten everything they know. It's a fantastic setup, and there is a follow-up adventure. But it's completely different to the usual Star Wars. It's got the Rebel versus Imperial fight going on, but so much more. But let's have a look at the back cover. Otherspace by Bill Slavicsek. Beyond real space, past the time-bending corridors of hyperspace, another galaxy waits to be discovered. When a problem develops with the hyperspace engine of an Alliance prisoner transport, members of both the Rebellion and Empire are deposited into a strange unexplored dimension between the hyperlanes and real space. Here, abandoned ships from all over space float beside those of unknown origin. These desolate craft orbit a giant vessel, drawn to it like moths to a flame, or a spider's web. Within the dark interior of the giant ship, the war between Rebel and Imperial finds new battlegrounds and new weapons with which to destroy each other. They'll also find something else, something that will just may find them first. It wants to escape Otherspace to reach real space, and when it does, the galaxy will die. A 40-page booklet includes character scripts that start the adventure and plunge the players right into the Star Wars galaxy, maps of the Rebel transport Celestial for visualizing the fast-moving action, details about the new alien races and strange creatures never before encountered in the Star Wars universe, non-player character templates, player handouts, and additional props for extra role-playing experience. Also includes a poster-sized full-colour map of the alien vessel Desolate, including complete descriptions and preset encounters, a miniature scenario including combat map and colour counters, scene cards that add a new dimension to a Star Wars universe, a complete adventure for Star Wars a role-playing game for Games Master and one or more players. And inside, we've got the usual high standard of artwork that West End Games provided. While it's not 100% accurate, it is very evocative of the Star Wars universe. You know, that Star Destroyer, for example, it doesn't have the ventral bulb, so it looks a little odd. But you can see a ship coming out of hyperspace. It's collided with a TIE fighter. There's action going on. It's very evocative stuff. We have an introduction, which reveals the background. You know, the players are rebels, what's happened before it, what the recent events are, who the main NPCs are. So we've got Bane Nothos, District Commander with dreams of advancement up the Imperial ladder. Grand Moff Ravik, Imperial Governor. Celis Mott, a pirate leader. Zadra, a mysterious bounty hunter. EL-434, an assassin droid serving the Empire. Barasco, the leader of the alien Charon and commander of the starship Desolate. And the Charon themselves, spider-like beings from a faraway portion of Otherspace. And we go straight into the action. So the players read through the script, and they end up being attacked by TIE fighters. So we've got a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. They come under attack from the TIE fighters. There's a Star Destroyer there. There's no way they're going to be able to fight this battle, so they will have to make a jump to hyperspace. The hyperdrive makes a grinding, popping noise. For a split second, nothing changes. Your ship continues to hurl through real space as dozens of TIEs pull steadily closer. Then all at once, reality shifts. Your ship emerges from the strangest light jump you've ever experienced, but something remains not quite right. Instead of the ebony sea of space, you stare out into a storm grey patterned nothingness. Swirls of coloured gases break up the ashy expanse like jagged bolts of lightning cutting through the billowing thunderclouds. But the most alien sight of all is the stars, not millions of pinpoints of dazzling light, but billions of holes of shining dark that pepper the storm grey space. So they are somewhere completely alien to them. They find the Celestial, the rebel ship, and they go aboard. They can attempt to sensor air sweep. They can try and communicate. They can also check their hyperdrive, where they'll find out they've got burned out parts. They need a replacement hyperdrive, must be found or built. Cannibalizing motivator, they are still short 5 parts. A hypercoil, an influx capacitor, a power coupler, a 4-axial stabilizer, and a real space compensator. Their sublight engines are fine. They've got information on their nav computer, which will allow them to reverse the jump if only they can get their hyperdrive working again. They can go aboard the Celestial, where they'll find out that in the chaos of its transition into Otherspace, the Imperial officers and people broke out. But all of that was for nothing, because they came under attack by the Charon. So there's lots of information as they search through the Celestial. Different areas, what they discover, different logs, lots of information, including the captain's log. And then, although there's lots of wreckage floating around, the main target is the Desolate, the massive starship which all of these wrecked ships are surrounding. The sea of dead ships entering the unknown ship. A landing platform. And we go on to the fate of Captain Griffin of the prison transport. Now, at this point, we should have some player handouts, but unfortunately mine have been lost over the years, as we go straight from page 16 to 25. So we will jump to the computer desktop, where I will show you those pages on a PDF. So this is the missing section from my physical copy, and the first page is an adventure script. Now these are the fantastic things that the West End Games version of Star Wars came up with, where you would hand this out to players, and they would basically do the reveal of information themselves. Instead of you having a big reel of text to put them straight into the action, which is something the Star Wars role-playing game did very, very well, you handed this out, and they revealed the action, and they got themselves into it, revealing all the background information. Absolutely brilliant way of doing it, and I don't really think I've seen other role-playing games do it, especially not as well. Continuing through it, we've got red mist scene cards. Now the Charon use a sort of biological weapon, clouds of gas, and this has different effects on players, and you would have these cards to hand out to the players when they encounter the red mist. We've got the deck plans of the Celestial, the prison ship. We've got a handout card here for Charon history and beliefs. We've got a map of one of the large chambers where a lot of combat will take part as the players are moving around bridges later in the adventure. And we've got a large map of the desolate. Now, the full colour version of this, which I won't be able to show you in full because it's broken down over 4 pages due to its size. But this is basically a map of the desolate as they move up from the platform 1, which is the landing chamber, right up to the command chambers where they're going to encounter the bad guys later on in the adventure. We've got some handout cards here, so we've got Bane Nothos, the Imperial Commander, Zadra, the Bounty Hunter, Celis Mott, a Pirate, Sharon Bioscientists, template type Sharon Warriors, EL-434, an Assassin Droid, Grand Moff Ravik, the Sharon Warriors, Barasco, the Sharon Leader. And then that's back to the rest of the adventure. But right at the back here, we've got the colour plates for the Desolate. Now, as I said, this is the same map as we saw before, but a full colour version broken down over 4 pages, because obviously it was much larger, folded out from the original adventure. And as we continue, the players start to explore the vessel, and they start to encounter people from the prison transport. So we've got Celis Mott, Scourge of Nathri Space, has gone mad. The first Sharon attack drove him into a swirl of red mist, one of the chemical weapons the Sharon use, which has made him insane. So we're encountering people from the prison transport, and we encounter people from other ships. We've got cutaways, the way Star Wars did, where we see what the villains are up to. Mists of Death, the cards that were handed out, or the cards which were available, which explain what the different effects are. And we've got the Heart of Darkness as they go through vehicle bays, hangar decks, computer rooms. They get attacked by the Sharon, including some who are suiting up in battle armour. We've got Chamber of Nutrients, fuel pods, waste conversion, Barasco's Hollow Park. Bane Nothos appears because the Imperial officers are starting to work with the Sharon as they have a greater plan to get back. We've got the Great Contest, where they're going through food storage pods, new engine, as the Sharon are working on creating a hyperdrive. An unsettling conglomeration of metal and organic material has been constructed. Recognizable ship parts have been combined with the alien organic technology to create a hybrid of the two, because they're trying to create a hyperdrive so they can journey to real space. We've got the Great Contest, where there's constructs, weavers who are creating abstractions, entanglements, shields. We've got shoot crawlers, jumpers, different villains as they try and make access. Then they're running up against the assassin droid. We've got waves of villains here. Zadra put into play. The Chamber of Sleep. The Sharon start to awake. And then they go into the nest itself with the living computer, the Altar of Death, the nest, the Grand Moff's Gambit, where he's trying to join with them to become a new leader to the Sharon. Then they have to go up against Barasco. And once they've got all the parts and they've defeated the villains, stopped the Sharon from having access to a hyperdrive, they can make their way back to their ship and repair it. Fixing it, they make a hyperdrive jump back to real space. The Storm Grey expanse shifts and expands as ship leaps forward. For long moments, only black stars streak by. Then you see light and colour as your ship enters hyperspace. The instruments check out and you lean back to wait. Stars move back by in coloured rainbows, then shift back to normal as you emerge into real space. And we've got the rewards. However, we've got one final cutaway to Otherspace, where Barasco sits within the command centre, idly disassembling a rebel blaster. They've still got access to some of the technology, and the Sharon will return in Otherspace too. Now, this is an absolutely fantastic adventure because it's very, very different to the norm. There's so much going on here. They're introducing a new villain, but you've still got the interplay between the Rebellion and the Empire in a classic format. It's still Galactic Civil War, but it's introducing this other threat, which the Imperial officers are going to try and ally themselves with, because they are bad guys after all. I see this adventure still being able to work in more modern games. Obviously, you'd have to convert all the stats, but the storyline itself is pretty darn solid. So that was Otherspace, an absolutely fantastic adventure, and one which is strangely looked down upon by some people, perhaps because it kind of gets away from the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't really get away from the core concepts. You've still got the Imperial versus Rebel battle going on, and it introduces some new themes and quite an interesting foe. But this adventure was never published again. It came out in 1989 for first edition Star Wars, and then was kind of forgotten about, which is really sad, because as I said, I think it's an absolutely brilliant adventure. I've run it a couple of times, and I've played through it a couple of times, and had loads of fun each and every time. Now that won the poll this week with some 41% of the vote, way ahead of everything else. Because in second place with 21% was The Outcasts for the Star Trek role-playing game from Fazer. In third place was Scared Stiffs for the Ghostbusters role-playing game, also by West End Games. In fourth place was the Deimos Mandate for the Buck Rogers XXV role-playing game from TSR. And drawing up behind was Tales from the Ether for Space 1889 on only 9%. Which is sad, because I love myself some Games Designers Workshop stuff, so it's a pity that I was way behind. But anyway, they're all cleared out the poll once again, although a number of them will go back in fairly soon. And we've got a retro RPG poll. So this week we've got The Adept's Way for Earthdawn. Now this has been in the poll before, but it's been about 8 months, I think, since it was last in. I love Earthdawn, it's one of my favourite fantasy settings, and one of the things about it is most of the people in the world are adepts, they are magic users. So, not just casting spells, but weaving magic into everything they do. So, a baker in Earthdawn will weave magic into the bread he makes. It's a very magical world and very interesting concepts, and the Adept's Way builds upon this, and it'd be lovely to cover it. Second up, we've got another Star Wars book, but this one for the Star Wars role-playing game from Wizards of the Coast in 2001, Starships of the Galaxy, with lots of starships in it, and we're starting to get prequel stuff in there as well, because this was after Episode 1 had come out. After that, we've got the Road Warriors for Deadlands Hell on Earth, an absolutely lovely post-apocalyptic cowboy magical setting, loads of things stuck in there, and the rule system's the core of Savage Worlds. Absolutely brilliant stuff, so it'd be lovely to cover it, and I haven't done any Deadlands stuff for ages. Then we've got the Arms and Equipment Guide for the Star Drive Alternity setting from TSR. I was very much late coming to Alternity, but I'm a big fan of the system. I think it's absolutely great. But this book, for some reason, I bought way back at the time. I don't know why I bought it, probably because I was interested in science fiction and I wanted to see what equipment was available in this setting before I dipped my toe in further. But I never bought the rulebook until just a couple of years ago. So there's like 20 years between me buying this sourcebook and then the rules, so I knew what this sourcebook was about. And finally we've got the Darklands for the Lone Wolf role-playing game from Mongoose Publishing. Now, Lone Wolf was very much my introduction to role-playing. While I played the Fighting Fantasy game books before that, Lone Wolf had one character going through it and drew me into an absolutely magical world, and was based off the Magnamon setting, which Gary Chalk and Joe Dever was playing in Dungeons & Dragons at the time when they were working for TSR UK and then Games Workshop. So, absolutely fabulous stuff. It'd be lovely to look through it, because the Darklands are the home of the bad guys of the Lone Wolf setting. What else I've been up to? Well, I've been publishing books on Drive-Thru RPG as usual. I decided to be a bit different this time, and I've been publishing ones on classes for a modern horror setting, but using the 5th edition rules. Because I had released some monsters before for a modern horror setting, and people were very interested in those. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to put classes in and see whether you could run a modern horror game through the 5th edition rules, which people will be familiar for. Over on rpggamer.org, well, I've been looking at the High Republic era. I'd been quite interested in this in Phase 1, but they'd ended it very abruptly, and I thought they'd stopped telling stories about the character I liked. But they've gone into Phase 3 now, and they've brought that character back. So I've decided to pick up the comics and start reading again, and it's very interesting stuff. And I've decided to start covering some of the stuff which bridges that year's gap as well. Because funny enough, Phase 2 didn't do that. We went Phase 1, Phase 2 dealt with other stories, and now Phase 3 is back, but a year later than Phase 1. So we've got a year to fill in. And these stories are absolutely brilliant. Now I'm covering those with the reviews, and I'm doing stats for the stuff for the West End Games D6 system. So if you like that, come on over and check it out on rpggamer.org. You'll find stats, you can join in and contribute by telling me what you think changes should be made, because these are just my versions of these characters and ships, and I take on a lot of feedback from that. But anyway, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough as usual, so thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.